The fluorescent lights in the executive conference room seemed unusually harsh that Tuesday morning. My palms lay flat against the mahogany table, steady despite my racing heartbeat. Across from me sat our new Chief Information Officer, his tailored suit crisp, his face carrying the kind of confidence you only get from never having been genuinely tested. "Fiona, your services are no longer required," he said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "Frankly, your logic is ancient junk. This company needs to move into the 21st century, and you're clearly stuck in the past ancient junk." 23 years of my life reduced to 2 words. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that woven into every licensing agreement I'd drafted, every contract I'd negotiated, every piece of proprietary software architecture I'd designed, sat one ironclad clause. The code expires if I am terminated without a board vote. 4 days later, the company received an invoice for $4.1 million, and their entire operational system went dark at midnight on a Friday. Before we get into how it all unfolded, a quick word. If stories about standing your ground, protecting your work, and watching karma do its thing resonate with you, hitting that subscribe button would mean a lot. This channel is on its way to 5,000 subscribers. People who appreciate real stories about real situations. Now let me tell you exactly how we got here. I'm Fiona Catherine Walsh, and for 23 years I served as Senior Systems Architect and Director of Technology Infrastructure at Hartwell Manufacturing Solutions, a mid-sized automotive parts supplier out of Columbus, Ohio. I grew up in a small apartment above my parents' diner in Youngstown. My father pulled morning shifts at the steel mill before coming home to flip burgers. My mother waitressed double shifts on the weekends. They couldn't afford to send me to college, but they gave me something more valuable. They taught me to really see people. The single mother working 2 jobs, the veteran struggling with old injuries, the immigrant family trying to build something out of nothing. Empathy wasn't just a word in our house. It was how we lived. That way of seeing people became my edge in the tech world. Technology isn't only about code and systems. It's about the warehouse worker who needs the inventory system to make sense after a 12-hour shift, the accountant terrified of computers who still has to run payroll every other Friday, building something that actually serves everyone, not just the executives behind their corner office doors. That philosophy guided every decision I made at Hartwell. The year was 1999 and the whole world was panicking about Y2K. Hartwell Manufacturing's infrastructure was a patchwork of aging systems on the verge of collapse. I was 31, working as a mid-level systems analyst at a consulting firm in Cleveland, when Hartwell brought us in to assess the damage. I spent 3 weeks in their server room, tracing cables, digging through documentation, talking to everyone who so much as touched a keyboard. What I found was worse than they'd feared. But I also saw potential. Underneath those failing systems sat a solid foundation. Good people, quality products, loyal customers. They just needed infrastructure built to carry them forward. I put together a proposal my boss called career suicide. Instead of recommending expensive third-party vendors, I offered to leave the consulting firm and build Hartwell a custom system from the ground up myself. In return, I wanted equity, a permanent seat at the table for technology decisions, and full autonomy. CEO Raymond Hartwell, grandson of the company's founder, looked at me over his reading glasses. "You're asking us to bet the entire company on you." "No, sir," I told him. "I'm asking to bet my entire career on this company." He shook my hand. We had a deal. The next 2 years were 18-hour days and the kind of problem-solving that either breaks you or forges you. I designed every system from the ground up, never losing sight of what my parents had taught me. Every decision made with the end user in mind. And the licensing agreements, those were my insurance policy. I'd watched too many talented people build something remarkable only to see a company sell it out from under them later. So every piece of proprietary code I wrote got licensed to Hartwell Manufacturing under very specific terms. The company had unlimited use as long as I remained an employee in good standing. If I left voluntarily, they kept perpetual licenses at no charge. But if I was terminated without cause, meaning without a 2/3 vote from the board of directors, every license would expire immediately, and the company would need to negotiate new terms at fair market value. Raymond Hartwell read every clause. His attorney read every clause. Everyone understood exactly what they were agreeing to, and everyone considered it fair. For 20 years it was never an issue. The systems I built carried Hartwell through the dot-com boom, the 2008 recession, and every wave of tech disruption since. The company grew from 200 employees to over 800. Revenue tripled. We expanded into 3 new states. Raymond retired in 2015 and handed the reins to his daughter, Elizabeth, who understood the business in her bones, having worked her way through every department. The transition was seamless. Then Elizabeth got sick pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in March of 2021. She fought it for 18 months, but by September 2022 she had to step back. The board began searching for a new CEO. Someone from outside the family for the first time in 70 years. They hired Nathaniel Blackwood in November of 2022, a man with a big corporate resume full of buzzwords about disruption and innovation. The board, worn down after 2 years of crisis, fell for it. I met him on his first day. He walked right past my extended hand. Nathaniel Blackwood's first 3 months brought sweeping upheaval. Consultants hired to rubber stamp decisions he'd already made. Departments restructured, positions cut, new executives poached from his old companies. In February 2023, he announced his biggest move yet. Hartwell was hiring a chief information officer, and my entire department, myself included, would now report to this new hire. For 2 decades I'd had a permanent seat at the table. Suddenly I wasn't even in the room. The new CIO arrived that March. Lloyd Hutchinson was exactly the type I'd learned to be wary of, mid-40s, immaculately dressed, MBA in hand, vocabulary loaded with phrases like legacy systems, technical debt, and digital transformation. Our first meeting happened in his corner office, Elizabeth's old office. He sat behind the desk tapping at his laptop while I stood, never offered a seat. "Fiona," he said without glancing up, "I've been reviewing our infrastructure. It's exactly what I expected. A patchwork of old systems held together by someone who's been here too long to see how far behind we've fallen. Our systems are customized for our operational needs," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Uptime over 99.8% for the past 5 years, user satisfaction consistently above 90%, and total cost of ownership 40% below industry average." He finally looked up. "Those metrics are meaningless if the underlying technology is obsolete. I've already begun conversations with enterprise solution providers. We'll be migrating to cloud-based, industry-standard platforms. Your custom code will be phased out entirely. Lloyd, those platforms are designed for huge corporations with standardized processes. Our competitive advantage has always been flexibility. The systems I've built enable that." He smiled without any warmth in it. "Fiona, you're thinking like a coder, not a strategist. This company needs modern solutions, not someone's personal project. I suggest you focus on documenting your systems for the transition team. That's your primary responsibility now. After 23 years of building and leading, I'd just been reassigned to write manuals for my own replacement. Over the following months I watched Lloyd dismantle everything I'd built. Contract developers hired, software vendors brought in. My team started turning to me for direction. "What do we do, Fiona?" asked Thomas, one of my senior developers who'd started with us as an intern a decade earlier. "We do our jobs," I told him. "We maintain the systems, serve the users, and document everything Lloyd asks us to document, with absolute precision and complete honesty." So I documented everything, every function, every integration, every piece of logic, not just what the code did but why it was built that way and what risks came with replacing it. In June, Lloyd pitched his technology modernization plan to the board. $8.7 million over 3 years. A beautiful presentation full of promises about efficiency and cost savings. I wasn't invited. The board approved it. The first casualty was my team. In July, Lloyd announced a restructuring. Contract developers would take over, and my staff would be shifted into support roles or offered severance. Thomas came into my office in tears. "They're offering me 6-month severance. Fiona, I've been here for 10 years. I couldn't save his job. By August, 7 of my 12 people were gone. By September, problems had started, reports crawling, system errors piling up, features that once ran smoothly suddenly needing multiple extra steps. The contracted developers would patch one issue and create 2 more. Not out of incompetence but sheer unfamiliarity. Lloyd's attitude toward me shifted from dismissive to openly hostile. In meetings he'd cut me off, contradict my assessments, crack jokes about ancient history, and legacy thinking. In October came the first major failure. The link between our inventory system and shipping platform collapsed during our busiest week. Orders came in, parts got pulled, but the shipping system had no record of any of it. Trucks sat idle while warehouse staff scrambled with paper printouts. The contracted developers took 3 days to patch it, and the new integration that emerged was slower, required manual verification, and had lost several automated features. I wrote up a detailed report on what had gone wrong and how to fix it properly. Lloyd deleted it without reading it. "The problem is fixed," he said. "We don't need to waste time on what caused it. We need to move forward." The migration timeline kept accelerating. Lloyd convinced Nathaniel the current chaos proved my legacy systems were the real failure, and the 3-year rollout got compressed to 18 months. Meanwhile, the company hemorrhaged money. Expensive contractors, expensive enterprise licenses, expensive training, all while operational efficiency dropped and customer satisfaction sank with it. In December, Elizabeth Hartwell passed away at 61, a brilliant businesswoman who had carried her father's legacy with real grace. I sat in the back row at her memorial, grieving a leader who'd understood that technology exists to serve people. With her gone, nobody left at the company remembered the early days or understood the philosophy behind what we'd built. In January 2024, Lloyd announced Phase 1 of the rollout would begin in March, the entire manufacturing operations suite migrating to the new cloud platform, and my custom system shut down for good. I requested a meeting with him. He made me wait 45 minutes, then gave me 10, checking his phone the whole time. "The decision is made, Fiona. I'm asking you to understand the risks. If the migration goes wrong, we're talking about production lines shutting down, orders not being fulfilled, revenue loss that could threaten the entire company." He looked at me almost with pity. "Fiona, I know change is scary, especially for someone who's been doing the same thing for so long. But I've overseen migrations like this at companies 3 times Hartwell's size. This is routine work for professionals." The migration was scheduled for the first weekend in March. I offered to help. He declined. "We have professionals handling this. We don't need legacy thinking slowing down the process." That Friday evening I sat in my office while my system shut down for the last time. 23 years of work gone dark. Monday morning I arrived at 6:30. The lot was already full. Inside, chaos. The new system had technically launched, it was running, but it didn't work, not in any way that mattered. Production scheduling couldn't handle custom client orders. Inventory couldn't track parts across multiple sites. Quality control had no way to run our specific protocols. Margaret, our head of production scheduling, 63 years old, 37 years at Hartwell, found me at 7:15 looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. "Fiona, we have 3 production lines down. We have orders due to ship today that the system shows as not started. We have inventory the system says we don't have. This is a catastrophe. Where's Lloyd?" "His assistant says he's working from home, not to be disturbed unless it's an emergency." I spent that entire Monday just helping people. I couldn't access the old systems or fix the new ones, but I could help build workarounds and manual processes. By the end of the week, the migration was an obvious failure. Production efficiency had dropped 40%. Order fulfillment time had doubled. Customer complaints had tripled. Lloyd blamed the staff. In a company-wide email he wrote that the transition period was challenging because staff were resistant to change and not sufficiently trained. March bled into April. The crisis settled into a grinding, permanent inefficiency. Workarounds became the norm, manual processes replaced automated ones. Tasks that used to take minutes now 8 hours. In May, Nathaniel finally started asking questions. Quarterly earnings had come in disastrous, the first loss in over 15 years. The board was demanding answers. Major customers were voicing concerns. A meeting got scheduled for Tuesday, May 14th at 9 a.m. Employment discussion, Fiona Walsh. I dressed carefully that morning. If this was the end, I'd meet it with dignity. Nathaniel sat at the head of the table, Lloyd to his right, Catherine from HR across from them. Nobody offered me coffee. Nathaniel spoke first. "Fiona, we need to make some difficult decisions. Lloyd has concerns about your ability to adapt, and frankly, the board is asking tough questions about IT performance." Lloyd leaned in. Your resistance to modernization has been a consistent obstacle. The old systems you built were inflexible and outdated, which is why the migration has been more challenging than it should have been. We need team members committed to innovation, not people clinging to legacy approaches. Lloyd, the migration has been challenging because the new systems weren't designed for our operational needs. I documented those needs. I offered to help. I was told my input wasn't needed. Your input was outdated, he snapped. This company was running on ancient junk held together by logic that might have made sense 20 years ago, but is completely obsolete now. Ancient junk. There it was again. Nathaniel raised a hand. Fiona, we're terminating your employment effective immediately. Catherine has prepared your severance package, 6-month salary, health benefits, standard provisions. Catherine slid the folder across the table. I looked at it but didn't open it. This termination, has it been approved by the board of directors? Nathaniel frowned. That's not necessary. This is an operational decision within the CEO's authority. I'm asking specifically about a board vote, 2/3 majority, voting to approve my termination. Lloyd laughed. We don't need board approval to make a staffing change. I nodded slowly. Then let me be clear. My employment contract contains specific provisions regarding the proprietary systems I developed. Those systems are licensed to Hartwell Manufacturing under terms that remain in effect as long as I am employed, or if I depart voluntarily, or if I am terminated with cause following a 2/3 vote of the board. The room went silent. If I am terminated without such a vote, I continued, all licenses for my proprietary code revert to me personally. The company would need to negotiate new licensing terms. Nathaniel's face shifted from annoyed to worried. Any code you wrote as an employee belongs to the company. That's standard employment law. Generic code, yes. But I wrote proprietary systems under specific licensing agreements negotiated and signed by Raymond Hartwell, reviewed by legal counsel, and incorporated into my employment contracts. Catherine started flipping through folders, looking alarmed. I don't have any record of such agreements. They're technology licensing agreements filed with legal contracts. Raymond Hartwell kept copies. Elizabeth had copies. Check the contract archives. Lloyd's face went red. You can't hold the company systems hostage. I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm explaining the legal terms under which those systems were created. You're welcome to review the contracts. Over the next 3 days, Catherine tore through the archives and found the original agreements. Legal reviewed them. Nathaniel and Lloyd held several closed-door meetings while I kept working and waited. Friday afternoon, Catherine called. The attorneys confirmed your licensing agreements are valid and enforceable. Nathaniel and Lloyd want to know if you would renegotiate the terms. What are they proposing? They want you to accept termination in exchange for a larger severance and a consulting agreement while they develop alternatives. No, I said. The terms are clear. If the board votes with a 2/3 majority to terminate me, I'll leave with standard severance and all licenses remain in effect. If I'm terminated without that vote, the licenses expire and the company can negotiate new terms. They won't bring this to the board. Nathaniel sees it as undermining his authority. That's not my problem. I'm simply holding the company to agreements they signed. Monday, Nathaniel called a special board meeting. A board member phoned me that evening. Fiona, Nathaniel presented your situation. He recommended we vote to approve your termination to avoid legal complications. He and Lloyd explained you were resistant to changes, that your systems were hindering progress. What did the board decide? 3 voted to approve. 7 voted against. We've watched this disaster unfold. We've seen the financial reports, the customer complaints. Several of us worked with Raymond and Elizabeth for decades. We know whose systems were actually working. Something in my chest loosened. Thank you. Thank Nathaniel for forcing the issue. He thought we'd rubber stamp his decision. Instead, he gave us an offer. Tuesday morning, an email arrived from Nathaniel stating that after consulting the board, he decided to defer any personnel changes pending completion of the technology transition. Lloyd didn't speak to me for 3 weeks, and when we finally did interact, the look he gave me was pure hatred. But the damage was already done. In June, 2 major customers took their business elsewhere. In September, Lloyd was offered a choice between resigning with severance or being terminated for cause. He chose to resign. Nathaniel appointed Helen Cartwright, VP of Operations, as interim CIO. Our first conversation was refreshingly honest. Fiona, I'm not a technology expert. I'm operations. What I know is our systems are a mess, we're spending money we don't have, and we need to stabilize quickly. I'd like your honest assessment of where we are and what it would take to fix it. Finally, someone asking the right questions. I put together a comprehensive analysis. The ideal path was a hybrid approach. Restore certain critical custom systems the enterprise software couldn't replicate, integrate them with new platforms where it made sense, and rebuild an internal team. Helen brought my recommendations to the board in October, and they approved a modified strategy incorporating most of what I'd suggested. It should have felt like a win, but some damage doesn't undo itself. The talented team I'd built was gone. Customer relationships would take years to rebuild. And my own relationship with the company had fundamentally shifted. I was no longer Fiona the architect who'd built something great. I was Fiona, the employee who couldn't be fired because of legal agreements. In November, I made my decision. I'm resigning, I told Helen and Nathaniel. Effective January 1st, 2025. That gives you 2 months to prepare. Helen looked genuinely sad. Fiona, we need you. The company needs stable systems and competent leadership. I can help establish both before I leave, but I can't stay. Nathaniel leaned back. If you resign, the licensing agreements remain in effect. Correct. Of course that was his concern. Yes, I said. If I leave voluntarily, all licenses remain in perpetual effect at no cost. My last 2 months were bittersweet. I documented everything, worked with Helen on a realistic path forward, interviewed candidates, and ultimately recommended Rachel Pemberton, who had both the technical chops and the people skills to do the job properly. My last day was January 3, 2025. Helen organized a small send-off. Nathaniel gave a polished speech. I never expected what came next. 3 weeks later, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Fiona Walsh. My name is Robert Kensington. I'm an attorney representing Hartwell Manufacturing. I need to discuss an urgent matter regarding your licensing agreements. Would you be available Monday morning? My stomach dropped. What kind of urgent matter? I'd prefer to discuss it in person. We agreed on a coffee shop. Monday morning, Robert Kensington turned out to be a partner at a large Columbus law firm. Immaculately dressed. Miss Walsh, I'm going to be direct. 4 days ago, Hartwell Manufacturing's primary operational systems experienced complete failure. Production is offline. Inventory systems are inaccessible. The company is dead in the water. I went cold. What happened? The failure is connected to your licensing agreements, specifically to license expiration. That's impossible. I resigned voluntarily. The licenses don't expire under voluntary resignation. He pulled out my termination letter from May. On May 14, 2024, you were terminated by Nathaniel Blackwood and Lloyd Hutchinson. That termination was not approved by a 2/3 board vote, which means all licenses expired immediately. But I didn't accept that termination. The board voted against it. I continued working 8 months before resigning voluntarily. The company's position was that the board vote was merely consultation. Nathaniel issued the termination in his capacity as CEO. You continuing to work was treated as temporary arrangement, not reversal of termination. That's insane. I received paychecks. I had full access. I resigned voluntarily with proper notice. I agree this is legally ambiguous. But here's the problem. Your licensing agreements contain automatic enforcement mechanisms, code-level verification that checks employment status. When you left in January, those systems performed their final check. According to company records, your last official status change was the May termination, never formally reversed. The systems expired the licenses. My systems operating exactly as designed but working off corrupted data. The solution is simple. Correct that status in the system, and licenses should reactivate. He shook his head. The license verification isn't just a status check. It's cryptographic validation tied to active employment. Once expired, licenses can't simply reactivate. They would need to be reissued. By me, I said slowly. By you, Mr. Kensington. Explain exactly what systems are affected. He pulled out a list and my blood pressure climbed as I read it. Everything, every piece of custom code, every integration, every module, all of it locked. What is the company asking for? They want you to reissue the licenses. Immediately. They'll pay whatever licensing fees are appropriate, but they need systems operational. Every day of downtime costs approximately $300,000. For days meant $1.2 million already lost. I need to think about this and consult my own attorney. Of course, but please understand the urgency. This company employs 800 people. Most had nothing to do with decisions that led to this. They're good people, and right now they're sitting idle. He was right about that much. This wasn't about Nathaniel or Lloyd's mistakes. It was about Margaret. I called my attorney, Sharon Weinstein, walked her through everything, and emailed her the contracts. She called back that evening. Fiona, you're in an incredibly strong legal position. The agreements are airtight. The company terminated you without proper board approval, triggering expiration. You're under no obligation to reissue them. You could demand any price. The leverage is entirely on your side. Sharon, what should I do? That's not a legal question. That's personal. What outcome do you want? What did I want? Part of me wanted revenge. But another part, shaped by my parents' diner by years spent building systems for actual people, knew that punishing the executives would end up hurting everyone else more. I want fair compensation for the value of what I created. I want acknowledgement that my systems were valuable, not ancient junk. And I want to make sure this company doesn't collapse because of two idiots. Then we calculate a fair market licensing fee, based on the value those systems provide, and draft a new agreement. What's fair market value? Based on revenue, the cost of alternatives they tried, and current downtime costs. I'd estimate $3 to $6 million for a perpetual license. The enterprise software they bought cost $8.7 million, and it doesn't work nearly as well. Exactly. You're not overcharging. You're asking for reasonable compensation for extraordinary value. We worked out the specifics. A one-time payment of $4.1 million for perpetual irrevocable licenses, less than the failed enterprise software cost, but enough to sting. The next morning I called Robert Kensington. I'm prepared to reissue the licenses. A one-time licensing fee of $4.1 million for perpetual rights. Silence then. Miss Walsh, that's a substantial sum. Your client is losing $300,000 per day. The enterprise software they purchase cost $8.7 million and doesn't work. $4.1 million for systems that are the only thing standing between them and complete collapse is more than fair. I'll present this to leadership and the board. They have 24 hours. After that, the price increases by $200,000 per day. By evening, Kensington called back. The board had approved the fee, though they wanted to negotiate payment terms, spreading it out over years. Sharon and I countered with $2 million up front, the remainder over 12 months with penalty clauses for late payments. They agreed. Contracts were signed within 3 days. Friday, I received a wire transfer for $2 million and reactivated the licenses. I drove to Hartwell one last time to meet with Rachel Pemberton. She looked exhausted. Fiona, thank God. I've been trying to understand your code, but it's so complex. We sat in the server room together, and I walked her through the reactivation. It took 4 hours, but by late afternoon systems were coming back online, production scheduling first, then inventory management, warehouse systems, quality control, shipping, logistics. One by one, Hartwell Manufacturing's operational infrastructure came back to life. Rachel watched, clearly in awe. I've been studying your architecture for 2 months. The way everything integrates, handles exceptions. Fiona, this is brilliant work. Brilliant work. Not ancient junk. Take care of it, I told her. Not just the code, but the people using it. That's the secret. Technology is only as good as the humans it serves. I left with a full heart. That's my story. The CIO fired me, called my logic ancient junk, and had no idea my licenses would expire the moment I was terminated without a board vote. The company ended up with a $4.1 million invoice and paid every penny of it. The licensing agreements I negotiated 25 years ago were never about greed. They were about protection, about making sure the value I created was actually recognized. When Lloyd called my work ancient junk, he revealed exactly how little he understood about technology, about value, about the difference between shiny and new versus tested and reliable. My systems weren't ancient junk. They were mature, refined, battle-tested solutions that had carried a growing company for more than 2 decades. The fact that they turned out to be worth $4.1 million only proves the point: you don't pay millions for junk. You pay millions for critical infrastructure you can't function without. To companies, value your people, especially the quiet ones building critical infrastructure, while everyone else chases the next shiny trend. To executives, understand what you actually have before you tear it apart in the name of modernization. To workers, protect your intellectual property, negotiate fair terms, and never let anyone convince you that experience means irrelevance. For 23 years, I measured my worth by salary and title. When that got threatened, it shook something fundamental in me. The licensing agreements forced a different kind of conversation, not what the company was willing to pay me, but what my work was actually worth in the market. The answer turned out to be millions. That knowledge changed me. I don't measure my worth by outside validation anymore. I know exactly what I'm capable of. I know the value I bring. And I know the right people will recognize it while the wrong ones will keep calling it ancient junk, right up until the moment they desperately need it. If this resonated with you, if stories about standing firm and protecting your work matter to you, I hope you'll subscribe. We're working toward 5,000 subscribers, people who appreciate honest stories about integrity, value, and standing your ground. Hit that subscribe button and let's keep this conversation going.